Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I've changed the name, it's now called Brittany's Bookish Brain. So today I am just going to be wrapping up my O.W.L.s Readathon, because not only did I read the 12 books for the O.W.L.s Readathon, but I also read 3 extra books. So, I'm just going to jump right in. So if you guys don't know what the O.W.L.s Readathon is, essentially it is where Book Roast over on her channel decided to base a readathon around the O.W.L.s and Newt's exams in the Harry Potter world, and we've been given a bunch of different wizarding careers to choose from, and we basically choose which one that we want to do, and it has certain classes that you have to take to be eligible for that career. So I'm indecisive, and I chose 2 different ones, and then decided to have like a challenge round where I did the alchemist one, even though I do not want to be an alchemist, but I chose to do that round just to see if I could read 12 books this month, and I read 15, so yay. I'm going to be going through the careers that I chose, and then I'll go ahead and fill you guys in on the rest of the books that I did read for the different classes. If you were wondering how much of a spaz I am though, this is what my little like sheet of keeping track and everything looks like. It's on the back of the like pamphlet. So for my initial career, the one that I wanted, but I felt like it was a little too easy because it's only 3 classes, is an Auralogist, which is somebody that studies auras. For the first class for that one, you had to read astronomy, which was to read a book primarily at night. For this prompt, I read The Vanishing Stair by Maureen Johnson. If you're not familiar, The Vanishing Stair is a sequel to the Truly Devious series. I did read Truly Devious earlier this month as a different class, so I will show you guys about that and tell you guys about this. But I just want to say this was a really, really great sequel, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I would highly recommend this trilogy because I did finish the 3rd book as well. The next book that I read was for the class of divination. For this, you had to assign numbers to your TBR and then use a random number generator to pick out the book that you were going to read. For that, I read Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And this book is literary fiction, so I was intimidated. But it turned out to be amazing. If you don't know what this book is about, there is a girl named Kaya who grows up in the marsh, and we follow the story of her growing up in the marsh, parallel to a story of somebody that has been murdered, and Kaya is the main suspect in the murder case, and we kind of switch back and forth between those years. And I was really surprised by how much I loved it, with it being outside of my normal genre of what I read. Ending was phenomenal. Like, I loved the ending. It was great. I'm really excited about the next book that I read that I had to read for Auralogist, which was to read a History of Magic book, which is a book that contains witches. For this, I read the Hex Hall first book. I've read this series before. It was my favorite series for a very long time. I think I read it when I was 15. It is so cheesy to reread it now, but so good. Still so much fun. I love the characters. It's cheesy. Some of the humor is very dated, but it's so much fun. If you don't know what it's about this girl named Sophie Mercer who gets into trouble. She's a witch, and she does a spell, and it gets her caught, and a lot of people, she's been doing this like over and over again, so she gets sent to the school called Hecate Hall, where prodigen that basically are risking exposure get sent to work on their powers. And it's so fun. There's a really swoony romance, and there is a murder mystery kind of happening in the school, and I just highly recommend the series if you just want something that's really fun to read. So those are my Auralogist classes. Next is Spellmaker. There are some classes for Spellmaker. Actually, all 3 of those books are also required for Spellmaker, but there is still, I believe, 4 more that Spellmaker requires. The first one being Ancient Runes, which is to read a book with a heart on the cover. For that, I read A Heartstopper Volume 1. Everybody and their mother has been raving about this book. If you don't know what it's about, it's a cute, gay love story about 2 boys in this high school, and it's cute. Like, this is all the rom-com feels, but it also has some great moments about coming out and like some bi rep, which I love seeing. I never see that, and I just, as a bisexual person, I think the rep was great. I think the experience is handled really, really well. I highly recommend reading this series. It's so cute, and like, just the romance is adorable. The next book that I had to read as a Spellmaker was The One for Charms, which is a book with an all-white cover. This is actually a reread. It is Warcross by Marie Lu. If you don't know me, Marie Lu is my favorite author. I love her. I love all things Marie Lu. It was so much fun. I don't know if I liked it as much the second time as I liked it the first time, but I do love the characters, and I do love how individualized all of Marie Lu's characters are. None of her characters from her other books feel like they're the same person. I also love the fact that this takes place in the same world as Legend, like 100 years earlier. It takes place in a world where we have this game called Warcross. There's a virtual reality created by Henka Games. This guy named Hideo Tanaka is in charge of it. And our main character, Mika Chin, accidentally glitches herself into the Warcross Championship, leading to Hideo hiring her as a bounty hunter to try and find somebody that is trying to hack into the system of his games. Really great. Highly recommend. It was very fun. Marie Lu's books always get 5s from me. The next book I had to read was for arithmancy, was reading a book outside of your favorite genre. And believe it or not, favorite author and all, sci-fi is not my favorite genre. So I read Wild Card by Marie Lu. This book, a lot of people didn't like this book. I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised when I was watching things about it when I looked it up after I had read it. And a lot of people thought it was very disappointing. However, I loved it. I thought it was so fulfilling. I loved the expansion on the characters. I love the expansion on morality. Like, there's a huge ethical debate about morality in this, and I found that very intriguing. However, I do understand how people might have frustration with the plotline, because the plotline is very intricate, and it does take a lot of, like, following things, and I had to go back and relook at things, but the continuity is there, and Marie Lu really crafted a world, and her characters are very dynamic, and I just felt like that was great. There's also a non-binary character in this, and it is very normalized, and I love that. I just think that Marie Lu has a really good grasp on her characters, and she's very good at creating realistic personalities. The entire plot line with Zero, if you know who that is, it's not a spoiler, but the entire plot line with Zero was handled really interesting and really expanded on his character. It got a 5 stars for me, because, I mean, I thought it was very satisfying as a duology. Like, I was worried when it was just a duology. I was like, how is she going to wrap it up? And she did a great job. And I kind of want a novella for after the events of this book. For the class Transfiguration, which is to read a book that has shapeshifters and or in the book or in the series, I chose Demon Glass by Rachel Hawkins, because I fell into this world again, and I was like, I need to read this book, and there are shapeshifters and werewolves in this. It's the sequel, and I'm not going to tell you anything about it, because that's a spoiler. The humor is hilarious, the romance is very interesting. I don't know, I just love it though. I don't care that it's insta-lovey. There is another character that is introduced, there's kind of a love triangle. Very clear that the author has a certain direction she wants to go in, and even now, in my year 23 and not being 16, I still am rooting for the guy that she doesn't have a lot of focus on, because I just think he's great and I like him a lot. No spoilers, and I highly recommend the series if you just want like a fun time, like I said. So those are all the classes for my Auralogist career and my spellmaker career. That being said, I still do have 5 books left to read, and I read them. So the first one that I want to talk about is I chose a add-on career, which is Merpeople Linguistics. And for that, you had to read a book under Herbology, which is a book that starts with M. I actually don't own a lot of books that start with M. This was really hard to find. However, I have been wanting to read a certain book, reread a certain book after all of these years, and I chose to do that. That book would be Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. And I gave it 2 stars. This is a weird one because I don't ever like to put a book down. I don't like to be controversial. But that being said, this book's humor was very offensive. I am not an easily offended person, and the book did have a lot of funny humor in it. However, it has a lot of slurs in it. This is not literary fiction. Saying the N-word does not serve any purposes aside from just saying the N-word. And Jessie Andrews is white, I checked. He uses the N-word in here a couple of times to describe a tattoo on somebody's body, when he could have just said, you know, the N-word. And he uses a gay slur several times. There's a lot of homophobic tendencies in this book. As well as I felt like there were a lot of racist undertones. I felt like the main character had a lot of racist ideas about his best friend because he was black. And those jokes really fell flat with me. I did not enjoy that aspect of this book at all, and that brought it down to 2 stars because I would not recommend this to anybody, because I do not feel like I want to promote that kind of humor. I think that it can be very offensive and very harmful nowadays. So I'm unfortunately going to probably unhaul this book because I just did not feel like it was as funny. When I read this when I was younger, I didn't understand the implications that a lot of the jokes made. As an adult, I do, and I don't really like them. Might be an unpopular opinion, but I just found it very problematic. The next book that I want to talk about is the book that I read for Care of Magical Creatures, which is to read a book with a creature with a beak on the cover of it. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. If you guys do not know, a new Hunger Games book is coming out in May, so I did already want to reread this series, and finding out, like, realizing that it has the Mockingjay pin on it, I was like, oh shoot, I can read this for this category, and I did, and it was so fun. I love the writing in this, the world, the characters, everything that Suzanne Collins crafts is amazing. So I'm very happy that we get to have a new book. I'm excited about the perspective that the new book is taking place in. If you don't know, it's from President Snow's point of view during the 10th annual Hunger Games. If you haven't read it, you should really get on that because the 4th book is coming out. So the next book that I read is for Defense Against the Dark Arts, which was to read a book that takes place near the sea. I read until 1:30 last night, and then I stayed up thinking about it for another 3 hours, and that is Salt to the Sea by Rita Sepetys. If you don't know, this follows 4 teenagers during World War II from Prussia, Germany, Lithuania, and Poland as they embark on the journey to board the Wilhelm Gustloff, which is a ship that wrecked, killing 9,000 something people. It was a bigger tragedy than the Titanic, but nobody knows about it. And we follow these teenagers on their journey to board the ship. They just all have these tragic, like, backstories. One of them is a Nazi, and reading from a Nazi's point of view, like, it was disturbing, the things that he believed and why he believed them and things that he did in, like, response to those beliefs. There was a lot of moral themes going on in this. Each one of them stays with you. I was actually worried because I wasn't crying, and then it all just hit me at the very end, and it just stays with you because you don't really know how to comprehend the fact that these characters are all younger than me, and in the midst of a war, like treating wounds and having shrapnel in their body and getting pregnant at 15. I would have to say a lot of trigger warnings for rape and gore and violence in this book, but I highly recommend it. I think that it gives us a really good perspective on the world that we live in and how blessed we are. I highly recommend this book. It got me in all of my feels. The next class was Muggle Studies, which for that I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is the first book for The Vanishing Stair. To, like, let you guys know what it's about, because I can tell you about the first book, it is about a girl named Stevie who attends Ellingham Academy, which is a prestigious boarding school for students that have focused interests. Hers is true crime. And she goes to Ellingham because there was a murder in the 1930s of Ellingham's wife, and his daughter was kidnapped and has been missing for years. And Stevie tries to go about solving this mystery, and while she's at the school, somebody that she knows is killed, and she has to start delving into that mystery as well. I also read The Hand on the Wall in this series. That is one of the 15 books that I read this month. 15. I'm so proud of myself. But that is one of the 15 books that I read this month, and so I did complete this whole trilogy. It is phenomenal. I highly recommend. I am not a thriller mystery person, or I was not before this, and now I am. And I just have to highly, highly recommend reading them because they are so good. And the continuity that she keeps throughout all 3 books just astounded me, because I am very much the kind of person that will go get the other book and look through it and, like, match things up, and it just was perfect, and I was very impressed. The last book that I read was for the class Potions, which was to read a book that was under 150 pages. This is probably the hardest one that I had because I own, like, no books that are under 150 pages. There was one, which is a novella bind-up. Honestly, not really planning on ever reading again, or reading in general, because I had not read it. Mainly because I was really sad, because the first book in this series was my favorite book for the longest time, and then I read the second book, really let me down, tried to read the third book, couldn't get through it, and that is the Bride Queen series by Victoria Aveyard, and I read the novella bind-up Cruel Crown. This has a Queen song and Steel Scars, those 2 novellas. I hated Steel Scars, thought it was awful, loved Queen's Song, thought it was great. Queen's Song kind of reminded me what I loved about the series in general, which is Victoria Aveyard's romance. I think I find a lot of issues with the political writing in it because it's very slow and it's very difficult to get into. The Steel Scars was like a 0 on a scale from 1 to 5. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like that character. What's her name? Farley. I don't like Farley at all. I never did. So reading an entire story about her was kind of annoying. But I needed to because I was like, there's no way I'm only going to read 49 pages and be like, oh, it's 100, 150. So that was what it is. It's just, ugh. I did actually read The Hand on the Wall as well. But I read 2 more books this month, and that was Heartstopper Volume 2, of course. After I loved the first one, I had to pick up the next one. Just as cute. More of the bisexual character coming out and figuring it out. There's a really beautiful scene with his mother. I just love this book so much. I like this series. I plan on getting Volume 3 soon. I loved it. It was great. The last book that I read this month is on my shelf, and I don't feel like going and getting it, but that is The Last Olympian in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. I had read the series when I was in 8th grade, and I have not read it since, and I've been planning on rereading it because I wanted to read the Heroes of Olympus series, and I've never read it, so that I can do a comparison video of the two and how I feel about it as an adult. But it was a phenomenal conclusion. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful, and I highly recommend it to anybody that's interested in reading something that's fantasy. Well, thank you guys for watching my wrap-up of this month and of the O.W.L.s Readathon. It was really fun to finally get to participate in something like that. And I don't think I've ever read 15 books in a month, so I'm really impressed with myself. I'm happy that I was able to keep that going. You guys have a great day. Bye!